System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left.
This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Friday, March 28th. I am Amin TMK alongside Amoja Little Tanky Sumler. Amoja, happy Friday, my friend. How are you doing today?
It's Friday.
That's a fact. Let's jump into some politics, shall we? Let's do it. Let's dive into this. Many people were, talking about how we were holding the Biden administration accountable. A lot of posts, a lot of conversations surrounding that. And I think that they were maybe thinking, okay, we're not going to be holding the Trump administration accountable in the ways that we can actually hold a presidential administration to account. But we need to be doing that now. And I wanted to start off with that. With Pete Hegseth, who is the Secretary of Defense. As you know, that is a very important role in the United States government, formerly, held by Big Lloyd, who we talked about a lot, who was a career military man. Pete Hegseth has
General, multiple stars, made a career in his shit.
And Pete Hegseth is a little bit different. Now, I don't think we've talked too much about the adding of the Atlantic reporter to the group chat. I think on our side, it's whatever, because at the end of the day, whether it was planned or not, it certainly, didn't rise to the level of the news that I think that most people kind of had it at. But it is interesting to see that many people have started to question Pete Hegseth's, like we said, experience, his, knowledge. Well, there it is. I have a bunch of questions for you, but I just wanted to, because we talked a little bit about Pete Hegseth. I wanted you to respond sort of to the adding of the Atlantic's reporter to the Signal chat meant, and sort of his background as a Department of the Secretary of Defense. Okay, this guy's, what is the context surrounding this guy? What are your thoughts on him? And we haven't really had we've laughed and joked about him in Hegseth and Hegsworth or whatever it's called. But what are your thoughts on this guy? Secretary of Defense.
I would say he's a clown, but that's it underplay, right? There's always this tendency to undervalue your enemy. You know what I'm saying? On the left, they trivialize everybody. So what I will say is, this is a man that's compared to the woke ass general he replaced, right? I mean, try to imagine someone like Big Lloyd being considered woke. I mean, Republicans live in their own little fucking world too, man. But at least Lloyd was a career military man, okay? Came up through the ranks, got his stars. So let's talk about Pete Hegseth in comparison, because you've got to know these people. So this is a person that did not go to Virginia Military Institute, did not go to Aim High, did not go to West Point, didn't go to any of those traditional places to become an officer in the military. Instead, he went to that great vaunted College of Military Science, Princeton. With a degree in politics, bro. I can't make this shit up. Woo. All right. So after that,
he's not woke, apparently. This is keep going.
A fucking unqualified hire, man. Anyway, he was in the military, the National Guard. He became an officer, a second lieutenant. I mean, very, very fucking low ranks, compared to the people that he's replacing. I will say this. He's been in some places that give me real concern. And there's things about him that give me real concern. This is a man who was in Guantanamo Bay. He was posted there, overlooked the torture area or era. He was eventually sent to Iraq and to Afghanistan as a coinista, counterintelligence, right? So again, remember when we talk about why inner city left deals with geopolitics, you got to understand almost everything that they do on a global level started here. COINTELPRO is the root of all counterintelligence strategies. It was invented by the fucking FBI, or at least first implemented by the FBI. And then it was militarized and taken out on an industrial grade. You know, they tried it all over the world with Langley. And then from there, they industrialized it with the military. So that you're talking about a man who overlooked torture, went to Iraq, you know, helped create ops, went to Afghanistan, helped create more ops. He came up under the kind of the Petraeus umbrella, you know. So, you know, and what's important to remember about that is Petraeus only got on because Westmoreland ends up getting fired, you know, because he was an admiral in the Navy, and he told Dick Cheney, if you carry on with this Iran thing, you're going to lead to the damage and embarrassment of the United States Navy. Because at the time, okay, and this is in the 2000s, like almost the peak of American military power, you know, Westmoreland is saying, if you attack Iran, you know, the Army might be okay. You know, the Air Force might be okay. But the Navy will almost certainly lose at least one aircraft carrier because it was close to Straits of Hormuz, by the way, a capacity they still have today. And they have actually more methods of inflicting damage to the United States when you look at what their missile capacity is, right? He got fired. Dick Cheney fired this man. And that's how Petraeus rose up. You know, so when you think about someone like Hegseth, who came up in this tradition, you straight up a yes boss. You got on by telling the president whatever the fuck you thought he wanted to hear to get on. So you're not talking about a guy with deep operational intelligence, a person that was ever a strategic planner of theaters of war. I mean, to say that this guy is over promoted would be an insult to what a promotion is, period. But there are things that they love about this man. For example, this boy got tattoos all up and down his body in a way whereas if a regular person had those tats and tried to get a job, you probably couldn't even do it. You know, and let's look at what some of those tats are. You know, that whole Deus Vult, which is God wills it. That's a crusader cry. You know, that's something to think about a man who is in charge of, you know, ostensibly marshaling the United States force. It gives you a really good indicator as to how he feels about Arabs and Muslims. And if that didn't, the tattoo he has right under it, which says kafir, which stands for infidel, does. So you're talking about a guy who's a holy warrior. And if that don't frighten you, I don't know what will. You know, he's beyond a Zionist. It's on his body. He's marked himself as their tool for life. You know, that is who we're talking about. That is who Pete Hegseth is.
Yeah, it seems like so much of his identity is just anti-Arab, anti-Muslim. I mean,
like Christian fighter. Even in the military, in fact, he was ostracized for being too much of a radical, you know, and that's, I guess, where he got his idea of the military's too woke. I can't even be a Christian. Well, look, bro, it's other religions in the United States military, you know, for good or for bad, there are, you know, and you can't make the people that are going into these places feel uncomfortable, you know, because, I mean, you know, everybody could die behind that bullshit, you know, and that's who he was. And that's what he's trying to bring about. Not just a hatred of Muslims, right, which is obviously there, a hatred of Arabs, which is obviously there. And that's what showed in this chat, you know, just the callousness with which they talk about ending civilian lives. You know, oh, yeah, dude went in there with his girlfriend and we blew up the building. So you followed him to the building? Why didn't you get him before then? If you had an ID on him, right? And nobody interrogates us on any kind of a big level, which brings us to the dude that they added to the chat. a literal operator who served in the IDF, who was the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, by the way. Ask yourself how that continues to happen.
Imagine writing for The Atlantic. Imagine being a activist-leaning person and writing for The Atlantic. I'll just leave it there. Please continue, my good friend. What a rag.
Clint Smith type of Nick. Anyway, yeah. But like it's so like that's what I mean when they talk about, oh, these are leftist rags. Anybody that's serving in the IDF is not a fucking leftist. So, fucking remember that. You know what I'm saying? Like 100%. And that's who this dude is. And I'm seeing all these memes where like, oh, it's Big Bird got added into the Darth Vader chat. This dude is not a fucking innocent. This dude served in the IDF. And
why does he have his number? Why does Hegseth has this guy's number? And they've been talking about, I forget who.
Mike Waltz added him, the National Security Advisor. Just to be fair. So
why did he add him?
Why did he?
The National Security Advisor had the Atlantic editor-in-chief or whatever in his pocket and just throws out random text messages. Yeah, y'all are that close. That seems a little weird to me.
And let's not forget that this dude held that knowledge, all that time. He could have easily, reported this to the United Nations. He could have reported it to Congress. Because, again, this is quite a scoop, right? As best I remember, I don't remember Congress giving the president a writ of war. We have not declared war, and people forget that matters. This was not an emergency action. The national security of the United States was not in question, right? All you had is really certain agendas, right? The goals, and that's not the same thing. Just because you guys have plans you're working on, that doesn't mean that something threatens those plans but does not threaten the United States. That the president has a constitutional ability to circumvent that, because everybody needs to go ahead and put their names on these votes. And see, I really feel like Iraq was a great example of that, right? Why they wanted to stop doing those kind of things, because it gives people plausible deniability. People like AOC, people like Bernie, I never voted for the wall because there wasn't no fucking vote put up.
There was no votes to be had, right?
If the vote was put up, though, y'all would definitely do it. And so in a way, the president provides the Democrats with cover so that they're able to play that double game like, oh, I would have stopped it. But they're not going to stop any of these military appropriations that are coming through that are being utilized to murder people that are just in their buildings where they live, not military targets, apartments. And that whole, Buddy was on the way to visit his girlfriend. That's not Yemeni culture. They ain't no casual hookups and no deeply traditional. I mean, who am I telling? You just go.
Yeah, even far more. I would say, modern Arab cultures probably wouldn't allow this either. You know what I mean? So obviously, the Houthis in general are, of course, like they're in the country, like they're living a more traditional life. Like, I can imagine like Afghanistan is not like a bustling city. You know what I mean? Like people are still living by more traditional methods. So to get to your point, if you know about, and this is the problem I think with most Americans, is they have no idea about other cultures. And if there's something they don't like about another culture, they just like to go, oh, okay, well, we should fix it. And they're bad people because they do this. And they are not really willing to learn the culture of another place to see how like those reactions may be.
And are among the worst,
They're by far the worst, yeah, because they claim to know, but they don't. And people on the conservatives, they can flatten everybody down to, terrorist, brown person bad. I mean, that's pretty much how they roll. But y'all talk yourself into, the liberals talk themselves into being as oppressive as possible, pretty often. And I think just to the conversation around, Hegseth and that is like, we talked a lot about how performative sort of the Democrats were, and they're very performative. We can go back to Joe Biden screaming, I apologize, the indigenous people, with no financial or backing of any kind. But I feel like the Trump administration is incredibly performative, and Hegseth is one of the most performative people. Not to mention that this guy is very similar to JD Vance. You're a book writer, man. You wrote a tell-all book. You wrote a self-help book. You're not, again, not saying that Lloyd Austin is a hero or a good person. He's not, but he was general. And this whole idea of the woke generals, but this guy's not a general. This guy's a nobody.
To become a fucking general, why wasn't Pete Hegseth able to do it? You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah, DEI, I guess. That's where they're gonna roll with it. Because yes, and it just goes to the point that they are everything that the Democrats were. They are the same performative, symbolic, putting people in charge just to say things that the administration wants. They don't have their own opinions. And the fact of the matter, again, I don't really care about the Signal chat thing or whatever. Like at the end of the day, Yemenis people are dying. But there is a lot to be said about the political backlash that is coming from this and people asking him to step down. And we know the Trump administration, Donnie J himself does not care about firing, people who are Secretary of Defense or Secretary of State or whatever it may be. His last administration was marred by, several different major, cabinet members and so on and so forth. And so let's keep talking because this person's not even this is the subject matter of so many conversations I see because of how truly blatant and ridiculous it is. And that's Elon Musk's presence within the White House.
Ooh, boy.
This is the man that said we'll coup whoever we want. I know we mentioned that a lot, but it is important that this is the mentality of this person who just said 2 weeks ago when, people were vandalizing Tesla dealerships and vandalizing Teslas that, the left was so, radical and he was hurt and he couldn't believe that anyone would vandalize his cars or his dealerships because he doesn't do anything wrong. He only tries to help people. Just a ridiculous idea that this person is very responsible for the coup in Bolivia. He mentioned it. Pretty much admitted it to himself, not to mention exactly. Not to mention, this is not the only country we're witnessing, internal strife and a G-side within the Congo and Central Africa, also huge deposits of cobalt. And yet this person is supposed to be telling us about government efficiency. This is a person that said the entitlements of Social Security and things like that are the number one thing that they want to cut. He just came out the other day, or I think it was like 2 days ago, and he was like, if the government was a business, it'd go bankrupt immediately. And this is sort of, I think, this is a good job that they've done. The Republicans have done this great job, this great propaganda. It's one of the few great propagandas that they've done where, they're pretty much acknowledging that, Donald Trump is a businessman and America is a business. They told this lie years ago, and there's so many people who believe it. I don't know if you saw this. We were watching, I wasn't watching The Breakfast Club. I don't normally watch The Breakfast Club, and you shouldn't watch The Breakfast Club. Great movie, but terrible podcast, terrible interview where Charlemagne and all those guys. But anyway, it was Adam Pac-Man Jones, former NFL player, on there, and he was talking about, at the end of the day, I'm good. I'm going to be all right. I'm going to be fine. America is a business, and America's business will, they always talk about the fluctuations will right themselves. The market will right themselves. And you are seeing a situation where the market is not righting themselves. We have 850,000 houseless people, 2 million people underhoused. There is no Medicare. There is no Medicaid. I mean, these things are being cut at all times, SNAP benefits, so on and so forth. And, we have to hear from Elon Musk, the richest person in human history, at least from what we know, or, maybe not Mansa Musa.
$1 billion a year in government subsidies.
Again, Donald Trump came out and told Elon Musk when they were having a little beef last year, and he was like, you know why you're rich, right? Because I gave you all that money. Because they had their little falling out. And we know J.D. Vance doesn't like him either. And it's just this uneasy coalition that has been built here. And I just wanted you to speak on Elon, everything I just said, and you can just dive in.
Everybody's got their own brands, okay? And that's the thing to talk about. In the era of influencer, all of these people got a brand. Hegseth has a brand. That's why he was on Fox News trying to look like your favorite frat bro, SWAT guy, right? Yep. You know what I'm saying? Look at my muscles. Look at my tats, boy. I'm sure Grinder be loving when this motherfucker.
Oh my God.
Any rate, you know what I'm saying? Vance has his own brand, and he's got to think, Trump ostensibly is only going to be here for 4 years, maybe less, old ass man. You know what I'm saying? He's got to think about his own brand. And what was funny to me was in the chat, no, I think it was a hot mic. It caught him a week or two ago, talking about how he's tired of having to deal with Elon Musk cosplaying as the greatest American when he's a South African. It just goes to show you, like, even with them, they're like, bro, you ain't one of us. We need your money, but you need to pipe the fuck down. He's like, dude is an unelected official. I am the vice president. It reminded me of that House of Cards fight with
You're talking about
Kevin
JD Vance.
Spacey. Yeah, right. Where Kevin Spacey is fighting against a billionaire. Like, you have money. I have governmental backed power, right? That's literally what was happening with that thing between them. Like, bro, whatever your relationship is with Trump, you can't make me do shit. I'm the fucking vice president. That was the whole tone of that, But looking at, going back to it, right? What I love about Elon is at the end of the day, he becomes the vulnerability of whiteness all over again. And it shows you there's no amount of money that pulls you away from that mind state of victimhood. You're the world's wealthiest man, but oh my God, as someone...
Dad owned an emerald mine.
You inherited. You're not no fucking tech genius. You started SpaceX and leveraged all of those fired NASA employees. You didn't make Tesla, you bought it. You're much more of an Edison than a Tesla in real life. You know what I'm saying? You didn't make Twitter, you bought it. And I think that's some of the problem that the other guys have with him. Even like Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg's like, I made Facebook. You didn't make shit. You bought it.
Well, that's controversial, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. At least he was highly involved. Let's say that. All these guys they're all steal their ideas.
Right.
I mean, and we go to Jeff Bezos, like his whole thing was like they gave him $1 million and they're like, hey, we want you to corner the market, on this book. He was like, oh, let's do books for now. And then he was like, oh, let's do everything. Right. You say the same thing about, Vanguard or BlackRock. Oh, your brilliant idea was to have so much money that you could buy stock in every single company that exists.
Stock, right.
Wow. You really got it up from the bootstraps, didn't you?
Your first contract is with IBM, but your mom is on the board of it. Board of directors at IBM. Behind all of these billionaire stories are really depraved, really sick individuals. And that's the thing. That's the thing that is the most damaging about this oligarchic government that we're in, that we find ourselves overtly run by, not even covertly anymore, right? That was the option you would have had, with Citibank and all of that if you would have got Kamala in. Nah, they don't even want the organizations because that's too damn slow. They want the straight up owners, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, all of those guys, a government for the corporations, by the corporations. But billionaires are not people that truly understand the human condition. Almost all of them are neurologically off. Elon is famously autistic, right? But most of these people are beyond that. They're deeply depraved human beings because think about
sociopaths.
Sociopaths and psychopaths. That's how you become a billionaire. You stop caring about the human condition because all you care about is your accrual of power, of wealth, of market share, whatever, because all that exists now are numbers and percentages, and people get in the way of that. These are not people that think about people. And that's why it's dangerous to have, it was Bill Gates a week or two again saying, well, we don't really need so many people now that we have AI and robots. A lot of these jobs, it's like, well, what the fuck should happen to the people that exist, Bill? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, well, if it's too many humans, what should we do? Right. And then you start to understand why they're not opposed to war. And they're not opposed to going all the way to, because in their opinion, it's too many fucking humans anyway. That's why you can't look to the right for answers, and liberals are a half measure because they fail to look at the true danger that these systems represent and often just serve as ways to augment that. you know.
And he was, I remember Donnie J was talking about the fertility of women in one of his little weird, press conferences or whatever. And he was like, and we're going to get the fertility of women up. We're going to have the goodie bags for them. We have lots of things for women. And,
Elon Musk. I mean, he essentially paying women to have his children. What do you normally say about a person with 13, 14, 15 children?
Yeah,
right?
they're mad because there's not enough white people. That's really the truth. It's too many brown people. It's too many black people. It's too many indigenous. It's too many non-desirables if you're a right-wing type person. You know what I mean? And that's why you see them with, all this very performative.
And it
go
puts
ahead.
You in these weird. It puts you in these weird places, right? Because you have all of these liberals, like, into all of a sudden shit that they claim that they're totally against, they want it now. Almost any liberal feminist you talk to, they hate. Rightfully so. They hate revenge porn. They hate all the, but meanwhile, they hate sexual degradation that's not consensual, right? But now you got all of these, white feminists like, oh, I can't wait for Grimes, who they still have a soft spot for, by the way. You know what I'm saying? I can't wait for Grimes to release the sex tape of her pegging Elon. What?
Oh, wow.
That's the shit y'all into? That's what y'all want to see? First off, you're not going to shame Elon. Clearly, he liked the shit. What he into is what he into. That's how he wants to get his shit off is the least of my problems with Elon Musk. My problems with Elon Musk are his vantage point to power and the way that he wields that power and his ideology. Because as you said, this is a man that's like, oh, woe is me. Why is the left so mean? But at the same breath, there's a man that's flying to Germany talking to AFD people, Alternative for Deutschland, talking about, I don't know. Y'all need to let that Nazi shit go. You need to stop being ashamed of that. You need to be proud of your grandfathers. Like, wait, what? Like, you straight up, and then he's
it's like one of the worst people it could ever be. You're pro-apartheid. You're pro-Israel. You're anti-worker. You're pro-coup. You're racist. You're transphobic. You're homophobic. You have no desire to help humanity. You've already said that you would, if I forget which the agency was, maybe it was the UN, I think they were like, if you can prove that $4 billion would end in the hunger crisis in the world, we're hungry, I'll do it. They showed him it could be done for less, and he still didn't do it. And he
bought Twitter, and he leveraged the buy, right? He didn't even put any real money up. He leveraged some executive level stock at Tesla. Assets to get a loan that will be, not paid on, no taxes involved. We already know that the Trump administration is pretty much ending taxes for the rich. The only people that are going to be getting their taxes audited and things of that nature are people that are making under, $120,000 a year. This is the Trump administration that we're dealing. So when we watch these shows that are, in Europe or whatever it may be, and they're discussing geopolitics and they're like glazing Trump or whatever, like we live here in America, like we are seeing the product of the Trump administration here, whether it's the economy, whether it's the ICE raids, whether it's, the continuing crackdown on free speech, whether it's the ending of, it's not like the Democrats weren't doing these things. I'm not saying that Trump is changing it. They do the thing that we've been saying for years. They are a little bit of a backstop for whatever the Republicans create. They do the best they can to make sure that those windows are open when Republicans come in. And then they just campaign on doing the smallest thing ever. And this last question I want to ask you before we get out of here. AOC and Bernie Sanders have been out on the campaign trail in Colorado, 30,000 people all standing at attendance. It kind of it goes back to this thing that I always talk about and we discuss, academia is 20 years away from what's currently happening. Pop culture is 5 to 7 years away from what's actually happening. And the Zeitgeist, German word, means what's happening right now. The Democratic Party has no clue what the Zeitgeist is. They are literally retreading Bernie Sanders, who just came out in an interview the other day and was like, Trump's doing a great job with the border. Aren't the Democrats supposed to be
pro-immigration or something. I mean, they have fallen so far away from that. Did you see this, AOC and Bernie, and what? Just your quick thoughts on it.
Of course. Look, this is once again a retread. Remember, man, when I told you the Democrats are cooked for a generation, that's what it is. Bernie Sanders is old as fucking hell. Okay, he's old as hell. Ain't no guarantee he's even gonna make it to 2028. And if they were to run Bernie on the front end, which of course they would, because it's got to be a white man out front, right?
Right.
With AOC behind. I mean, this is the same retread. This man has proven with his voting record. Fuck the speeches. Look at his actual voting record, which is what I've been saying about this man for a decade plus. You know what I'm saying? He's no different. He's no different from in a voting point of view than Joe Biden. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially as it relates to Israel and the wars in the Middle East and all of those things, you know? And AOC's lost all of her street cred. You know, the real thing would have been to have her be a firebrand, even a performative firebrand, you know, for the past 4 years with Joe Biden to leverage that, right? Then you run her out like, oh, look at my record of leftism. Oh, yeah, I'm going to run in 2024. And, you know, primary Joey B. Like that would have been a strategy, you know, and it could have worked if they would have spent her for those 4 years really doing leftist shit, even performatively, because you have to have plays within plays, and that's what the Republicans understand.
Yeah,
they're setting Vance up for 2028 with a background of things. Again, the Democrats could have done this with Kamala, and they didn't do it. You didn't see her do shit until it was time to run, and they had to kick Joey B out. You know, she had done so little. I wasn't even sure they were really going to give her the nomination. But I knew if they gave her the nomination, they didn't have her in to win. And that's just the bottom line. AOC is much the same thing. The Democrats would have to have someone that doesn't exist yet in their party. They've gotten rid of all of those kind of people. You know, again, I'm not truly a leftist, but like Cori Bush, she voted in such a way to maintain some street cred in a way, whereas she might have been viable for 2028. You know, the Democrats neutralized her ass and got her out of the way. The Democrats did. They primaried her. It wasn't like she lost to some Republican. No. AIPAC didn't like her voting record, and they chopped the block on her ass, and she's gone. You know, and she still hasn't even disavowed the damn Democrats, right? That's how good they are, you know. She still wants to run again as a Democrat, get her seat back, you know? And the Democrats are so good at doing that. You know, they did it with Dennis Kucinich, you know? They got rid of him years ago. You know, he came back, tried to run as a Democrat again, lost again, you know? Whereas what should be happening is what we tell people all the time. If you're truly a leftist, you have to understand if you really believe these things, you're going to have to make a decision and choose some other party. Right? I don't know if that means, you know, one of these guys creating a party of their own, you know, or if it means, you know, going in with PSL or going in with the Green Party and allowing that infrastructure that already exists to be utilized, you know, but that's just not what's happening. And I just don't see them having any type of real success in any of those ways, you know, and that's where they are. That's where we are. But, you know, again, they will go out there and they'll sing that song and some people will fall for it, but not nearly enough. I mean, they've lost so much credibility. You can only squeeze the sponge so many times. You know, ain't nothing to squeeze now. It's all gone. The juice is squeezed. I can't hear you.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' in the city left.